I thank you, Honourable Presiding Member, and I'm quite happy to speak today on the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I have been doing so since the first time I entered Parliament in 2001, and at every budget I have made it a point to make an intervention under this ministry. That's because, Honourable Presiding Member, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the history of this country, particularly since the ethnic conflict took on fairly large proportions, has been one of the key ministries that have been used by consecutive governments against a counter-insurgency strategy. And it has been a ministry in the past at least, of lies. A ministry that has chosen to cover up major offences, deny major offences, both in international human rights law and international humanitarian law. And till this government came into power, that has been the reality. It has essentially been one of the key aspects of the ministry has been to tackle the Tamil people's claim for their rights in this island, and has been spearheading a campaign to portray the Tamil struggle for our rights as one of mere terrorism, and has carried out a campaign against the Tamil people at large. Now, the question, Honourable Presiding Member, is whether this government, since it came into power, has changed any of that, and whether its approach towards the ethnic conflict, particularly with regards to the way in which it handles foreign policy, with regards to countries that have shown interest in voicing the concerns of the Tamil people in this country, and how they have dealt with that aspect. And that's a key. Now, what is the test, Honourable Presiding Member? I have before me, and I will table this in the House, the statement by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zaid Rad Al Hussein, via video link to the Human Rights Council. Now, this statement was made on the 14th. This statement was made in 2015. In 2015, September 30th. Now, in this statement, I think it's a very important statement, because it is after the statement that the then government in 2015 co-sponsored a resolution in the Human Rights Council. And this is what the High Commissioner, who is a very highly respected jurist and an activist, says about the situation in Sri Lanka. I welcome the government's commitment made before this council to investigate these violations and ensure accountability, despite the opposition of some political parties and sections of the military and society. The unfortunate reality is, however, that Sri Lanka's criminal justice system is not currently equipped to conduct an independent and credible investigation into allegations of this breadth and magnitude, or to hold accountable those responsible for such violations. He goes on to say, firstly, Sri Lanka lacks a reliable system for victim and witness protection. And then he mentions a few matters there. Secondly, he says, the domestic legal framework is inadequate to deal with international crimes of this magnitude. Specifically, Honourable Presiding Member, the High Commissioner refers to the fact that Sri Lanka does not have in its laws international humanitarian law violations, mass crimes as offences, and that therefore states a very valid point that Sri Lanka is not equipped to deal with the nature of the crimes that is being accused of. Thirdly, and this is the most important part that I wish to bring to the Honourable Minister, who is thankfully here present, he says, the state security sector and justice system have been distorted and corrupted by decades of impunity. The independence and integrity of key institutions such as the Attorney General's Office and the Human Rights Commission remain compromised. The security forces, police and intelligence services have enjoyed near total impunity and have not undergone any significant reform since the armed conflict. That remains a fact even today, even whilst the Honourable Minister presents his case under this head of foreign ministry. And he goes on to say this. This is why I have recommended the establishment of an ad hoc hybrid special court integrating international judges, prosecutors, lawyers and investigators, mandatory to try notable war crimes and crimes against humanity with its own independent investigative and prosecuting organ, defense office and witness and victims protections program in a highly polarized environment, which is what Sri Lanka is even today. Such a mechanism is essential to give all Sri Lankans, especially victims, confidence in the independence and impartiality of this process. Judicial accountability, Honourable Minister, he says, should be accompanied by broader transitional justice measures, including truth-seeking, reparations, to ensure that the right of victims to redress is realized. I'll table this entire report to this House. Now I'm saying this and I spent some time in marking this because it is after this report that the 2015 Good Governance Government, or that's what they call themselves, I don't agree with it, agreed to co-sponsor a resolution. But despite that, when Ranil Wickremesinghe became president, he went back on that, supporting that resolution that he himself, as Prime Minister, is supposed to have co-sponsored. He went back on it. He got his Foreign Minister, Mr. Ali Sabri, to oppose it quite vehemently. And the then Foreign Minister Ali Sabri, on the 27th of July 2023, when he met with the foreign correspondents in Sri Lanka, he very clearly justified going back on the resolution and merely creating a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, a TRC, to ward away international intervention or international interference. And in doing so, the most important part, I have two articles here which again I will table. One titled Truth and Reconciliation Commission could help Sri Lanka starve of foreign intervention. And another one, Sri Lanka's Truth Commission is to ward off international interference and will have no prosecuting powers. I will table both of them, where he assures on the 23rd of September, on the 27th of July 23, he assures the foreign correspondents, and on the 4th of September 2024, he assures this House. He comes to Parliament and he assures this House about recommending the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, as that commission will never have prosecutory powers. Now that is the previous government's position. The government before that with Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Mahinda Rajapaksa, we all know they are suspected war criminals, that they are not going to prosecute themselves. Any fool will know. So we don't expect that from them. But it was Ranil Wickremesinghe who co-sponsored that resolution that Ambassador Zaid, High Commissioner Zaid had presented, who goes back on it and gets his Foreign Minister Ali Sabri, who was the advisor to the then Defense Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Mahinda Rajapaksa, to make this statement regarding no prosecutions. Now again, the current president, when he was campaigning for the presidency, has made repeated assurances that not a single person will be brought before court. So there will be no judicial proceedings against any violators. He has said it repeatedly, not once, several times. From before the president, before he became president, then after he became president, whilst he was campaigning for the parliamentary election, he has made those assurances. And it is in that context, Honourable Presiding Member, that my good friend, the Honourable Foreign Minister, went to Geneva this time. And he too has opposed the resolution. And instead, what he calls for is a domestic mechanism. If I'm not mistaken, he calls for a truth and reconciliation mechanism to deal with all wartime atrocities. But very clearly, not once has he given an assurance that there will be a criminal prosecutory process. Now, if a criminal prosecutory process is to happen, Honourable Presiding Member, it is quite clear it cannot be domestic. It is quite clear, if you really want to have reconciliation, if you really want to get to the bottom of this, then that process must be credible vis-à-vis the victims. And for it to be credible vis-à-vis the victims, it cannot possibly be domestic. At the very least, it must be an ad hoc hybrid mechanism where the control of those investigative processes must be international in nature. That is the only minimum way in which you can in some way have credibility, give credibility for that process to victims. Now the question, Honourable Presiding Member, is whether this government has departed from past practices. That is the key question. And it is my view, very unfortunately, that this government has not departed. And there are serious doubts with regards to this government, not with regards to the NPP as such. But we cannot forget, and I say it with utmost sincerity, that the JVP, when Mahinda Rajapaksa was president, was its ardent supporter. Was its most ardent supporter with regards to a military solution. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the current president, Mr. Anura Kumara Dissanayake, on several occasions has taken credit for the fact that it is the JVP that managed to give a holistic argument justifying a military solution. That the government at that time was merely talking racist rhetoric, communal rhetoric, but it is the JVP that very technocratically created the justification to mobilize the public in favor of the war. In favor of a total war was the word he used. So in that context, the question is whether genuinely this government can spearhead an accountability process. A process that you supported so heavily, knowingly that there were very grave offences taking place, you despite that chose to go ahead with a complete support for the war because in your own logic you felt that it was more important to destroy the LTT regardless of what the side effects will be. What the side effects will be. And today when as victims we say that we face genocide, and when the High Commissioner, probably the most respected jurist when it comes to human rights and international humanitarian law, says that Sri Lanka is not equipped because of the nature of the conflict, the polarization that is within, that a domestic mechanism just will not do. The question then is, what is the answer that the government has? I repeatedly said, and I'll say it again, the last 77 years has been an utter disaster for the Tamil people. The last 77 years has been an utter disaster because it has been a racist regime that has come time and again. They may say something, at a particular time that is a bit soothing, but in reality their practices has been against the Tamil people, against accepting the rights of the Tamil people. The only time that a government has genuinely come into power that is a departure from those two parties that have governed from time to time over the last 77 years is this government. But this government also has a huge spot, a huge mark on its back. Because it is this government or the JVP that supported the most heinous times faced by the Tamil people, which was the Mahinda Rajapaksa regime. So therefore, it is your government that must come clean. Now I am asking the Honourable Foreign Minister, why on earth are we frightened of an international mechanism? If we actually did not commit any offences, the Tamils are not running away. Why are we running away? Then you know for a fact that the nature of the conflict that took place is so polarizing that an internal mechanism will just not do. Why not submit to an international mechanism and actually come to the truth? Shouldn't the Tamil people deserve at least that? It doesn't mean that just because we go through a prosecutorial process that there cannot be reconciliation. But if you do not have criminal justice at the heart of this process, then everything else is a cover-up. Which is exactly what previous governments have been trying to do. Now, Honourable Presiding Member, I also want to bring up something that has come up recently. Now, I normally don't make these comments. I try to avoid making comments, even though I repeatedly speak on the Foreign Ministry with regards to other governments. But when the NPP government won the elections, the ambassador to China visited Jaffna and made comments which I thought was very unbecoming of an ambassador. I don't think the Chinese government follows those processes, but certainly the ambassador broke tradition in my view and made completely unacceptable statements in support of the NPP. He interpreted those election results and he welcomed the NPP support in the north, particularly in Jaffna. The NPP got only 24% of the vote. Only 24% of the vote in Jaffna. They might have got 3 seats out of 6, but they only got 24% of the vote. On what calculation the ambassador thought that the Tamil people of Jaffna voted overwhelmingly for the NPP, I don't know. But he should never have been allowed to make those comments. Now, if the government is so sincere with regards to changing the culture, then the foreign minister must actually question the ambassador. Because it is completely unfair for an ambassador to make such. I don't think any other ambassador in any other
Honourable Member, country, you have 2 more minutes.
From any other country has made such comments. Now, why I am saying this, Honourable Presiding Member, is from the 19th to the 23rd of February, a Minister for National Ethnic Affairs Commission, Mr. Pan Yu, has visited Sri Lanka with a delegation. And he has also met the Buddha Sasana Minister, and I am told has stated that China wants to open a cultural affairs center, Sri Lanka China Cultural Affairs Center in Jaffna. Now, this particular ministry, the NEAC, Honourable Presiding Member, is the ministry that is in charge of ethnic minorities in China. And the Honourable Minister knows fully well that there are serious allegations against that ministry, against the policies of that ministry. Amnesty International has accused the Ministry of suppression of cultural and religious practices. There are allegations of genocide against the Uyghur Muslim minority practiced by this ministry. Human Rights Watch has accused the Ministry of mass surveillance and data collection. There is accusations by Epicenter of assimilatory policies. And China's head of ethnic affairs is keen to end minority culture. That is their policy in China. Now, the same sort of sentiments were expressed by Gotabaya Rajapaksa, that he doesn't like minorities, that we must all assimilate.
Honourable Member,
now,
your time
when
is up.
the Chinese ambassador goes to Jaffna soon after the elections and makes these comments, And then when a minister who's very controversial, whose ministry is one of the most controversial ministries in China, visits Sri Lanka, and it's a secret visit, Honorable Presiding Member. What on earth would a Chinese minority-related ministry come to Sri Lanka and not meet any of the minorities? One only meets Buddha Sasana Ministry. And the Buddha Sasana Ministry, especially the archaeological department, is something that is extremely controversial. We have been accusing the archaeological department specifically of systematically carrying out cultural genocide in the Northeast. I would urge the Honourable Minister to come clean. If India or if America or if any other country minister had come and visited, my God, it would have been all over the papers. People would have been criticizing every single word that a minister says. But this minister and a delegation has come and gone and we don't know anything about it. We have to do research to find out what has happened, especially in the backdrop of the way in which the ambassador has made comments and this particular ministry has been accused in China. I think the minister must come clean. Thank you very much.